You're listening to the Life Purpose Advisor Podcast, episode 25.
There's no one diet or system that works for everybody. Even when you do find certain diets that work well, there's certain things that you should cycle through and change up once in a while, which is not really fully understood often. And the tendency that most people want is they want A plus B to produce C, so they want to find the diet that they're going to thrive on. It doesn't matter what diet you go on. If you respond really well to it, at some point, eventually, almost everybody will plateau or it'll sort of flatten out.
You're listening to the Life Purpose Advisor Podcast.
Life purpose, spirituality, higher calling, personal growth, meaningful life.
We ask the deep questions about living a balanced life of meaning, purpose, and joy.
Passion, know thyself, be mindful, spiritual practice, aha moments, life lessons, balance.
It is time to welcome your host, Angie Swartz.
Today, I'm very excited and honored to share with you my personal health care provider, Dr. Bret Mosher. Dr. Bret Mosher has been a leader, an expert, and an innovator in the field of natural medicine for nearly 4 decades. His experience in and knowledge of natural medicine are equaled only by the level of concern and dedication he invests in every patient. He has created several groundbreaking programs designed to promote optimal health, including the Mosher Health System and the Diet by Design system. His mission is to provide patients with the treatment and education they need to take control of their own health, and in his words, not to age prematurely. Dr. Mosher, I'm so excited to present you to my listeners today. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Angie. Nice to be here.
Great. I have so many things I could ask you, but before we get started in that area, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your business and what you're doing. I met you 4 or 5 years ago when I was struggling myself with severe migraines, and I have to say my life has never been the same. I'm so much healthier and feeling control of my own health. The interesting thing about you, though, is that over the years you've used so many different things. You have a lot of great modalities and talents in your office. I'd love to just hear you talk about that a little.
Well, like you said, I've been doing this, I think, about 38, 39 years. And I'm a doctor of internal medicine, licensed acupuncturist, clinical nutritionist, expert in functional medicine, and an acupuncture orthopedic specialist. So it sounds like a lot, but it's like playing the piano every day. After a while, you get pretty good at it and get to learn more songs. So I've just been blessed to be able to do this work and do it well. Most of our patients that come in, they're either in pain, they have severe fatigue, or they're suffering in some fashion. Most of them have been to the typical Western medical model, tried so many drugs, different medications, had certain tests done. Many of them are kind of in a gray area. They're suffering in some fashion, but nobody can really diagnose what's going on. The functional medicine, Chinese medicine is so completely different than conventional medicine that we ask different questions and we often get different answers. So we're actually able to help a lot of people where they've never gotten answers before. And probably the 2 biggest things that people would come in for would be pain and fatigue. Those are probably the 2 biggest things in any practice. And those are kind of nebulous and hard to track down sometimes. So, obviously if you got an infection or cold, you take something or wait for the body to deal with it and you get over it. But there are a lot of conditions that in Western medicine, if they just focus on the square inch in a reductionist model, a lot of times they've missed the context from which a symptom is happening. So you can have somebody that comes in that's clinically depressed, for instance, and exact classical symptoms, flatness, fatigue, chronic pain, not sleeping, changes in moods. And it could be coming from very distinct areas and not get the same kind of treatment in this type of medicine. You could have functional hierarchy problems with neurotransmitters. There could be changes in hormones, chronic infections, food allergies, a number of things that can be a contributing factor to keeping somebody in fight or flight. And they have no idea that any of those things are connected. So that's my job, is to identify the landscape, find out what your genetic expression is, and then find ways and means to identify, work with it better, and educate you so you can manage your condition and your health.
That's one of the things I love about coming into your office is I learn something every time about how to take care of myself better, as opposed to experiences going to other doctors. I often felt unheard or unsure of what the person was even looking at. So I really appreciate that about being in your office. You mentioned a few minutes ago that you ask different questions than a Western medical provider might ask. Can you just give an example or two of what that might mean?
A person could come in, like I was talking about depression and anxiety. A person could be coming in and have anxiety, for instance. I want to know if it's coming or going in waves, if it's every day, if it's more situational. But, a lot of times they'll tell me it started 2 years ago when they went on a trip to Europe, and ever since then they've had a problem. But their whole life they never had a problem with that. So I know that there's probably not a biochemical or genetic basis for it. There's some other trigger that's putting them into that kind of stress response where they're not adapting. So in many cases, I might find something as simple as a chronic infection someplace, in their gut in particular, that keeps them in fight or flight, and it gets to the point where the body doesn't adapt, and then they start having anxiety, and they don't handle the stress well. I remember 30 years ago, whenever it was, when Prozac first came out, I had a young woman, she was 19, healthy life, athlete, a surfer. Her and her husband went to Mexico on a weekend trip. They came back, and she was given Prozac and diagnosed as being clinically depressed. And then we did some lab work on her and found out that she had a parasitic bacteria in her gut. She took the medicine to kill it, and it's as if she had never been depressed. That was kind of one of the first cases come to mind, but that repeats itself over the years. Those kind of things will happen. Sometimes people come in with joint pain of different types, arthritis, joint pain, and the fatigue that goes with it. And in the vast majority of cases, a lot of those people have food allergies, and if you don't identify the foods that your body's reacting to, you're not going to get control over the pain, let alone your energy and your moods. And often in Western medicine, they will focus on the joint or the pain or the area of inflammation, but they don't try to identify the context and landscape from which that inflammation comes.
So you're always focused on the cause.
Yeah, but you have to put everything in context. In Western medicine, I could have 5 people with a stomach ulcer in front of me. They get tested for H. pylori in Western medicine. They'll all get the same medication, and they can all get better. In Chinese medicine in particular, which is a different way of looking at health and disease, you can have 5 different diagnoses, 5 different treatment programs or protocols or herbal formulas for that, and they can all get better, but with 5 completely different diagnoses. In Western medicine, if they don't identify and name the infection, then technically you're not sick, and there's not a problem. In Chinese medicine, if you tell me the name of the infection, it doesn't help me treat it. I have to identify how the body's responding to the stress of the infection and look at how the body's not working right. That defines everything in Chinese medicine. So it's a very different point of view, and that's where we're actually able to treat a lot more chronic conditions that a lot of people aren't able to get addressed properly.
Right. I know I've sent lots of people to your office over the years because I don't really see any other option. I know magic happens in the doors of your offices, but I know you're often treating inflammation, and inflammation seems to be a buzzword that we're reading a lot about on the newsstands and seeing in the news these days. But can you just elaborate a little bit on why that's such a problem?
Yeah, that's a great question. And in fact, I've decided to headline a new website and probably a web store just focused on inflammation. But inflammation is an immune response, and inflammation is just like fire. A little bit will cook your food, and too much will burn your house down. So if you're looking at any degenerative or chronic degenerative condition, from dementia, neural problems in the brain, or degenerative joints, doesn't matter where it is, you're seeing inflammation that's in excess that causes premature degeneration and things to break down. So that's probably the brunt of what we're managing with inflammation. You can have too little inflammation, that's bad too, but most people the problem is excess inflammation. And it's an overreactive immune response or a series of stressors that's keeping the body in an inflammatory immune response and also keeping the person in fight or flight. So they never get a chance to rest, rejuvenate, rebuild themselves. You could have pain anywhere in your body, and it could be directly tied into an immune or autoimmune problem in the brain. It could be tied into an inflammatory allergy or infectious problem in the gut. Or it could be some other set of metabolic problems where the body's not adapting properly, and then the body overreacts with inflammation the body's essentially trying to protect itself with an immune response when that happens.
Mm-hmm. And do you think emotional issues impact inflammation as well?
Yeah, of course. It's the total stress load from gravity, driving on the freeway, emotional stress that you're holding in, or chronic infections, or not sleeping for 3 nights in a row. Your ability to adapt to any and all stress is really the issue. stresses can be pleasant or unpleasant, but it's a total stress load that you're really looking at. And so at one basic level, most of us have way too much stress and we're not balancing our lives out to rejuvenate and adapt to it. That's one thing. And then when the body function starts to drop down progressively, then you start seeing inflammatory conditions come in, excess degeneration come in, infections behind that will come in, and as that progresses downward, you start seeing more and more things break down. But there's a whole strata of symptoms, excess inflammation, where things aren't working right, from digestion, energy, moods, strength, mental clarity, sleep, any kind of functional thing you can look at. There's a whole strata of those problems that will show up before a gross disease or pathology will show up. That's kind of one of the gifts of Chinese medicine in particular, and how they look at the universe, that they identify patterns of stress before the gross disease manifests. It's one of the great gifts.
So instead of, just to put that in very clear terms, so instead of treating cancer with chemotherapy, you're actually seeing the things that would prevent that from happening in the first place.
In a sense, you would see it as a progression of functional changes that eventually lead to the gross pathology or disease.
Right. Right.
Albeit, just to be clear, according to the state of California, do not treat cancer.
Okay. Thank you for that.
We have lots of patients who are doing different types of cancer therapies, and we support those. So we support their immune function, their cellular activity. We support them in detoxing from the chemotherapy or radiation. We put them on regimens that deal with not getting in the way of the chemotherapy, for instance, and then another set of regimen that we would put them on to help clean it up and protect the cells between rounds, and plus anything to make them more comfortable and smoother, which acupuncture is well established as something that's actually quite effective at smoothing out the side effects that a lot of people suffer from.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great.
But again, that's a functional point of view, though. So we're not treating the disease. We're treating how the body's responding or not responding to all those stresses.
I see. I could talk to you about your practice for the whole time that we're going to be on the phone, because I think it's so valuable and so interesting. But I really want to talk about you personally. Can we do that?
Yes. Let's see if I have an opinion about anything. Go ahead.
I think you must always have an opinion, so this will be a lot of fun. Do you know your life purpose?
Pretty much what I'm doing for my work. It's not just about health. We help people to connect to every aspect of their lives. And if the health gets in the way of them doing that's our job, is to get rid of that block or debris in their life, whether it's degeneration, inflammation, chronic conditions, pain, fatigue. If people cannot do things in their life, they can't connect to things in their life. Ultimately, our job in improving a person's health is to help them to do and be and connect. That's it.
Okay. And so you've been doing this work for 40 years. Is this the only thing you've done your entire life? And I don't mean to say only as if the work was mild, but did you do anything before it?
I was a good cook. I could wait tables pretty good. Not very good at valet parking. I started this when I was really young. I started doing this kind of stuff when I was about 19.
Mm-hmm. Did you have any aha moments that pushed you in the direction of doing this, your life's work?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I was in college, kind of pre-med stuff, doing a lot of sciences, and listening to a radio talk show one day, and this guy was being interviewed said that you could just imagine a blue light coming out of your hand, and you could actually make somebody feel better, help them to get well. And so my roommate came home, and he had a severe Charlie horse. He'd just been running. He was in deep spasm, and I thought, okay, let's try it. I put my hand above his calf. I could imagine, feel as if a blue light was coming out, and within a few seconds, the muscle just let go and released and evaporated, almost like magic. That's the first time I consciously did anything to try to make change in somebody's body. And then soon after that, I started studying Chinese medicine and kinesiology. And then when I started applying these things and finding out you could actually make change in somebody's body, I've been driven by it ever since, and I've never stopped.
Mm-hmm. And this is your love, your biggest hobby, is that right?
I love this work. I'm going to do it to the day I die, and if I don't do it, I'm miserable. How's that?
Right. But I hear you often talking about you're always reading about the cutting edge of what's going on in medicine and new trends, and oh well, there's something else to try, something new there, and your passion shines through in the work that you do.
There's a ton of information, as you all know, out there. I mean, you can almost look up anything. The amount that we know about almost any condition is insane. But my job is to take some bit of new information and then try to find ways or means or tools to actually apply it and make change in somebody's life or body. So an example of that is that We started doing genetic and DNA testing in the office, about a half dozen things that we actually test for now. One of them is for methyl groups. It's a CH3 group. It's a chemical tool that the body uses. So the body will take these methyl groups and convert chemical A into chemical B so the cells can do all these different functions. Every neurotransmitter in your brain is dependent on these methyl groups and their conversion into the active form. So I read about that, and then there are some products that have come out on the market, but I wasn't satisfied with how they worked or the response, the form that they used, how they had to take it as a pill orally and go through the digestive tract and liver and then eventually get to where it was going to go in the brain. So we developed our own formula of methyl donors with cofactors with a delivery system that goes under the tongue. And when you need it and you take it, you just feel better. And then they found out from genetic testing that about 40% of the population have mutated genes where their genes are damaged and not making these methyl groups well. So we would discover something, apply it, see the response in a lot of people. And now with some of the genetic testing, we're actually able to quantify reasons why we're seeing that kind of response in the population, which to me is fascinating. Another example is that we've been treating liver function problems in Chinese medicine my whole career. And eventually, I think it's like in the early 90s, they actually started coming out with lab tests where they could chemically measure different detox pathways in a person's liver and functionally find out how that liver is responding or not responding to the job that it needs to do in different ways. So over time, you start seeing the patterns, you treat it, and then find different ways to verify and track it, and it just makes for much better medicine over time. So that's the stuff I stay up late at night reading.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I like about you is you're always verifying. Like you have an assumption or you see something on the body, but you're always verifying in a whole bunch of different ways that your hypothesis is correct before any treatment ever occurs. You are also very interested in blood work, and it seems like you combine some traditional things. You pull all the tools that you need to make sure you're doing a good job.
Yeah, that's right. It's actually a spectrum of areas that we take information from, but assume nothing, verify everything, and then educate the person about it so they can understand and have more control. We're doing that every day constantly. So on the objective spectrum, we can do MRI, CAT scans, blood tests, any kind of test an MD can order, all the way to we do a lot of blood work, a lot of work with saliva hormones, neurotransmitter testing, and then the full physical exam and all the information we gather through Chinese medicine, which is a whole system in and of itself of medicine and assessment. All the way down to reflexes and then much more subtle kind of pattern problems or recognition problems. So it's quite a spectrum from objective data to much more subtle kind of information. And then we piece all that together like strokes on a palette, to see what the total picture is. Mm-hmm. And then we try to verify what we find. We try to make it real to that person so that they get it.
Right.
So you could have a spasm in your foot. I push on it, it hurts, you look at me weird because I hurt you, and then I give you some potassium, and in 10 minutes the spasm's gone, and all the muscles in your body have relaxed. So in that case, in the moment, we don't need a lab test. There's a potassium deficiency. There's an imbalance of electrolytes, so that's really direct.
Is there any danger in taking supplements?
Sure, just like anything. More the supplements that are come from food complexes or closer to food are going to be safer. And the more refined the substance is, the more you can get in trouble with it. And potassium is a good example. People think bananas have a lot of potassium. They do, but a food that's higher in potassium is actually watermelon. And the thing is, watermelon is full of sugar, but the thing you need to process that sugar in watermelon is actually potassium, which is already in the food. But if you refine it to a potassium pill in some form and take too much, and your electrolytes are out of balance, you can actually send it in the wrong direction. If you're tired, exhausted, your blood pressure is low, your adrenals are not working up to speed in certain fashions, the potassium can actually fix that or make it worse depending on which pattern it is. So, yeah, there's some things to know about that. And also, another thing that comes up often is people say, well, this is natural because it comes from somewhere in nature, right, of food. But herbs in particular, herbs of any kind, of any system, are drugs. You take them, they modify what's in your body. And they can be enormously healing and balancing, but they can also, because they are chemical quantities of chemical substances that modify your body, they can actually make you worse. So there's some basic guidelines you can follow. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Trial and error is actually pretty good, but people can get into trouble taking certain substances. My body is prone towards a lot of inflammation. So if I take antioxidants that eat up the free radicals and clean that up in the body, I feel better. But you can take somebody else whose immune system is underactive, or they're cold and slow, they're hard to adapt to different kinds of stresses. They may get recurring colds and flus or infections of a certain type. Their body doesn't respond really well. So in the case where I'm trying to take logs off the fire of inflammation, in their case, we want to put logs on their fire of inflammation and increase the inflammatory response. But if you give them lots of antioxidants, you'll actually make them much worse. You give somebody like me lots of antioxidants, I'm going to feel better. And the same thing with foods. You take somebody that's deficient, slow, low, and cold, who needs more metabolic push, like the person I'm just describing, and you put them on a raw foods diet, you're going to ruin them. You're going to destroy their health, and they're going to crawl into the office. Mm-hmm. Somebody like me, I should be fasting a little bit, which I've been doing lately. I should be juicing and eating green things. So it's not the same for each person. There's no one diet or system that works for everybody. And then even when you do find certain diets that work well, there's certain things that you should cycle through and change up once in a while, which is not really fully understood often. And the tendency that most people want is they want, let's keep it in the area of diet, they want A plus B to produce C, so they want to find the diet that they're going to thrive on. It doesn't matter what diet you go on. If you respond really well to it, at some point, eventually, almost everybody will plateau or it'll sort of flatten out. But if you look at what our ancestors adapted to over thousands and thousands and thousands of years, they had cycles of feast and famine. They had changes from season to season. They had variability and a change up in their foods. And when we do that in our diets, you get a much better response. So I could go on an anti-inflammatory diet, cut out all the carbs, eat meat really high fat for a period of time, just like an extreme paleo with less protein, a lot more fat, and mostly healing for my body. But I wouldn't stay on that, so you stay on any one kind of diet, you're going to start seeing other deficiencies come in behind it. Mm-hmm. So the idea of Atkins, paleo, ketogenic diet, those diets that really cut the carbs down, on some people, if they don't get enough carbs periodically in certain forms, it starts to affect their neurotransmitters, for instance. So the serotonin levels could drop down. They could start feeling kind of irritable, not good, not sleeping well, and they wouldn't know why. And one of the people that recognized these kind of shifts, who was just absolutely brilliant, was Atkins, who I'm a big fan of. He was misunderstood, and people didn't follow his system the way he really prescribed it most of the time. But he was just brilliant and understood those kind of things and talked about it decades ago. So I'm a big fan of his. Mm-hmm. An example of, makes sense if you think about it carefully, our ancestors, the berries would come into season, and that's what they had to eat at the time. So they would eat those until it came out of every orifice of their body, right, out of their pores. They'd eat mass quantities of it. But those berries are full of sugar, but they're also hugely full of antioxidants. So taking mass quantities of antioxidants in the form of those berries will clean up and detox just a ton of debris. It's a huge detox process. Eat those things in season, large amounts, and then when the season's over, you're done. But if you try to buy those berries or red flameless seed grapes from around the world, you can follow the summer around the world and get fruit from around the world and eat fruit every day because they fly it in from around the world, right? So if you're eating grapes or those berries every day, it's going to impact your blood sugar after a while. You're really not designed to do that on a long-term basis. And that goes back to the genetic adaptation and changes and cycles that our ancestors went through. That's our genetic heritage. That's what we're designed to do, is adapt and do things in cycles.
Mm-hmm. It's very hard to get back to talking about you because this is all so interesting and you're such a wealth of knowledge.
It's all right.
But can we get... No, I love it.
Carried away.
I love it all. I love that you love what you do and that you're there to teach us. So you've been so passionate about this work for so long. Were there any major life events that came up in your life that pushed you in this direction or pushed you away from other things that, kind of kept you on this purpose track for you?
Nope.
Nothing. No, your life has been a breeze.
No, just doing it. When I started doing it, I was compelled to do it. I've been driven by it ever since, and I deeply love it. It's what I do. If I don't do it, I'm miserable, so I don't argue with it, and I do it. It's good. Right. So it's not like I was on my deathbed and started asking questions about diet, how to improve my health, and then it saved my life. I don't have any of those stories. I've just been driven by it ever since.
Okay. What a great honor for you to be, people want to find what you have. They want to know their purpose and be consumed by it. So it's good. It's good to hear that exists for sure. I totally get what you're talking about. I feel that way about my work as well. Can you tell me about spirituality? What are your spiritual and religious beliefs?
All right. How much time do we have? No? Okay, good. All things come from God and go back to God, and our sole purpose is to connect and to learn to love and be loving beings. That's it.
That's very succinct. Okay.
So anything that gets in the way of that, including your health, are things that we work on.
Right.
So in a sense, my job in the clinic, in life, is not to make somebody healthy. My job is to make somebody healthy so that they can connect and learn how to be a more loving human being in the world.
That's very beautiful. Well, that certainly has been the case for me. Thank you for allowing me to walk through your doors. Tell me, what tools do you need? What tools have you used over the years to know yourself better? Do you have favorite books?
I constantly read. I read almost every day, every night on this stuff. There's so much information out there. It's just tremendously great. Yeah, there's a guy that wrote a book on the ketogenic diet, Keto Clarity. His name's James Moore. And in the beginning of the book, he referenced all the best people in the universe that I've respected and been studying for a long time. I just love the way he put that out there. So he'd pull information, quote, studies that they'd done. So anything he talked about in his main text, he referenced to these people, which is just brilliant. That's a hard one for me to call because I read so many.
What about you? Will you be writing a book in this lifetime?
That's my goal. And in a way, this is actually the beginning of it, this conversation we're having right now.
What an honor. I look forward to reading it.
So I've been working on the outline. People don't understand the landscape. It gets really confusing. They want to make things better. They want to be better in different ways, and they get lost so easily. There's so much information out there, and it boggles people down. Unless they stumble across something that actually works up front and easily, then they'll go with that. So I actually break down these stumbling blocks and kind of prioritize them. I break down and prioritize functional systems in the body and try to paint a better map so people can navigate the waters better. So an example would be if, let's just say you have fatigue, which is a common complaint, right? So it could be that your organs are not functioning right, the adrenals or thyroid are not working right, so metabolically you're not going to adapt to your stress and put out the chemicals to adapt to stress, so you're going to be tired if they're overwhelmed. That's a common diagnosis. But what if it's your liver not processing certain materials, a certain detox process that then leads to the formation of neurotransmitters in your brain? What if the web of hormones are off and you're not right? What if you have chronic stressors that are not in your awareness, like food allergies and unidentified chronic infections? So those are all kind of different priorities. So just from a functional point of view, you have fatigue, and the problem is a neurotransmitter. And in the brain, we're really talking about gas pedals and brake pedals chemically, excitatory and inhibitory chemicals in a sense. And you think you need hormones. You take hormones, you work with them, you do some testing, you go see somebody, or you try to do it on your own. You may feel somewhat better, but not get very far because the functional hierarchy are those neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters that are balanced, like gas pedal, brake pedal, like driving a car, then stimulates your body to make the hormones that you need. The problem is in the neurotransmitters, and you're looking someplace else, you're going to hit the wall. And sometimes it is just the hormones. If you can balance the web of hormones in your body, you're going to feel better and doing it at that level. Sometimes if you facilitate liver processing and detox processes, it will affect every hormone in your body. We have a lot of women in particular with the problems with their cycles. A lot of them, we just facilitate liver detox depending on what they need, and it just has a hugely balancing effect on their whole cycle and all the hormones. And that's it.
How about you? Do you ever get sick?
Yeah, of course. And
you treat yourself? How does that work? Like you're seeing sick people all day long?
It's pretty rare for me at this point to get deeply sick for a long period of time, like a really bad cold or flu. But every once in a while I get it. This year I actually got a bad case of bronchitis. I had a hard time getting rid of it. And I'm not against Western medicine.
What did you do to treat yourself?
I took all the stuff that I take. I took all the herbal formulas and things to strengthen my immune response. And just because of the demands on my life, like a lot of people, I couldn't get above it. I wound up going to the Western doctor and went to 3 of them. And I'm the worst patient in the universe because I know too much. So by the time I got somebody to listen to me, because I know my body so well, right, and then I got the stuff that I needed, I was able to get above it and take care of it. I've had chronic inflammation my whole life. I had problems with irritable bowel and digestive problems for decades until I figured out it was actually a food allergy. When I cut that out, it cured it.
So interesting how the body works. Do you think that the physical body plays a role in people being able to see their own life purpose?
Well, yes. And you can't have an experience, a thought, feeling, and impression without some kind of chemical, physiological event happening in the body. The body is the stage on which we play the play. Like Shakespeare's point of view, you want to become a more loving human being. You want to make certain changes in your life, whatever it is, right? How do you know anything's real? It's based on your feelings, your perception, and the information that you get is through the body. The body is the tool, the stage through which we experience life. It's not who we are ultimately, but it is the stage and the tools that allow us to plug into life and experience life.
And do you think the body is extremely intelligent?
Beyond our understanding, hugely beyond our understanding. Every cell in the body knows what every other cell in the body is doing. If I'm standing next to you and I'm standing close enough to you and our bodies are getting information from each other, my cells know what your cells are doing. We're not aware of it, but it's happening.
And how does that translate?
Could just be a feeling inside of you. You could feel closer to me, farther away from me. You could just get a feeling that this is real good or this is real bad. I mean, how many of you walked into a room and just in a split few seconds you looked around and go, oh, there's a problem here, or that person doesn't look and feel right, or you walk into a room and then you can't take your eyes off of somebody because there's something really good happening there. That's your experience that you're experiencing through your body when that happens. But there's so many things that happen between people that we don't have an awareness of, but it's there.
We're not really taught. We're not really taught to understand the magnificence of that.
We're taught that we're separate entities, separate beings, separate cells, separate systems, separate organs, that we're separate from each other. It's a reductionist model in Western medicine and science. We're taught to break things down to the smallest, most fundamental unit, which you can learn brilliant things, but if you lose the context from which anything comes, you don't really understand it.
Well, hopefully we're headed back in the other direction now, or it feels like we are.
I think we are, because I think there's a counterculture in the United States that's happening right now. A good example is just food. There's a slow food movement and foodies, farmers markets, grass-fed meat. People are trying to get back to things as they were designed to be, like eating animals that are raised in pastures and grass-fed as opposed to, grain-fed and in the factories where they do it. And there's so much information about stuff like that. The difference between grain-fed beef and grass-fed beef chemically is huge. They're chemically so different, you almost can't compare them.
Well, I can't wait till that continues to happen, and I know that you will be on the forefront of teaching people how to live in this new way. I know you're already there. Do you think synchronicity plays a role in your life?
That just kind of ties in with what we were talking about. I mean, if everything's connected in different ways, whether we're aware of it or not, the synchronicity is that we walk in faith. We trust that things are connected, whether we're aware of it or not, and that things are working out according to God's will. We don't always have awareness of it, but the more you understand it and think about it and put your attention there, the more you walk in faith of the moment and of the divine. And this is a different world, thinking that you're separate in any way, that you're there and I'm here and we're separate beings, as opposed to having the experience that we're actually connected in some way. Very huge differences. People do good things is when they feel connected. People do bad things is when they're disconnected. And in fact, that's the universal internal yardstick that we all have. You can ask yourself at any instant, do I feel more connected to myself, each other, the world around me, the environment, and God? Or do I feel more disconnected and farther away? In any instant, you can ask yourself that question, like a yardstick, and you can tell if something's moving in the right direction or wrong direction for you. You don't have to even understand it. You can just go based on your experience.
Easier said than done, right? Like we're a culture used to pushing our way through to the things that we want in life. So again, we're going through a transition there. It seems to be more intuitive to what you're saying and more allowing of the natural flow of life. Which
innately makes sense. We want to do that. And how do you know that's happening? How do you know you're moving in the right direction? Well, do you feel closer to yourself and each other and the world around you? Do you feel farther away?
Good barometer.
At any instant, you can check in, even while you're busy and trying to forge the world into something
How about resistance? Have you ever encountered resistance to this work that you do from your friends, your family?
No. I cut those people out a long time ago.
You cut them out?
Of course.
Right. So you have experienced resistance, but you didn't let it get in the way?
Well, I went through one marriage, got rid of that one, and that's cut off that part of the resistance in my life, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And you're married now?
I am.
Uh-huh. And no resistance from your wife?
No, they're completely aligned with it.
Great. Do you have more than one wife?
I have children.
Right. How many children do you have?
2.
And are they following in your footsteps?
Yeah, my daughter a little bit. My son, he thinks that everything I do is voodoo and out to lunch.
Well, he'll be around someday.
Well, he's at the age where he thinks he knows everything, so
right.
No mystery there.
Right. Well, he'll be back. Can I ask you a lightning round of yes or no questions?
Okay.
Some may be short answer. Do you think that passion and purpose are the same things?
Yes.
Do you think that everybody has a life purpose?
Yes.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being high, how important is following your joy and igniting your life purpose?
On a scale of 0 to 10, That would be 11.
Okay. Did you ever quit your job to follow your purpose, and do you think somebody needs to?
I did ever quit my job when I finally made it through school and got licensed. I stopped doing a part-time job.
Okay. What brings you great, great joy in your life?
People getting better.
Anything else?
Nature, loving, kind people, helping somebody. Gardening. I love to garden. I deeply love to garden and grow stuff.
Anything else?
If I wasn't doing this work, I might have been a farmer.
Farmer. Well, you might still be a farmer. You never know.
Yeah, things go, huh?
If you unexpectedly amassed a good-sized fortune, what would you do differently?
Only work with people I like and not as much.
Okay, great.
If I didn't have to work for a living, I'd still do this work without question.
Right. It's so much a part of who you are, you don't have a choice, I don't think. I mean, we all have choices.
This work is how I discover what's in the universe. So I'm just compelled by it every day.
That's
and it's
beautiful.
so gratifying when we figure something out that just changes somebody's life. It's just deeply wonderful to watch.
Very nice. Tell me, what should listeners learn from your life?
Do as I say, don't do as I do? What?
I know there's something else in there, Brett.
That's kind of what you were asking me about spiritual life. It's all about connecting and dissolving the illusion that you're separate from everything and everybody, and surrendering to the divine and abiding in that connectedness and the love that's there. That's the deeper reality of everything. But it's the hardest thing that we do, and it's the most important thing that we do. And the more you focus and surrender, the better life is. The less you do, the more misery there is.
At what age did that become apparent to you?
When I first started to understand the concepts of it, at 18, 19.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually when I was 4, but that's another story.
Well, we'll save that for the next interview. And I'm sure that it's still teaching you along the way, that bigger versions of that statement keep coming.
Deeper, wider, longer, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you have anything that you would like to recommend for people that are listening for their health or their purpose, or any tools or resources or any offers that you'd like to make? I'd love for you to make an offer to everyone listening so that they get to experience the magic of your practice.
Well, the main concern when I first meet somebody is whether I can help them or not. So what I'd like to offer is to do a short physical exam, ask them some questions, measure their meridians on an accugraph, and just do an assessment on them and try to have a conversation with them about their concerns and their health. Normally that would be an initial visit. So through this venue, I think we'll just offer that if we can tag it to your infrastructure and venue here, we'll just make it free.
Free? Wow. That's, how much does that normally cost? That's a $200 or something
Yeah, I
visit?
think it's like $185 or something like that.
So if you're listening and you're interested in going in to see Dr. Mosher, just tell him or his team that you heard about this on Life Purpose Advisor, and they will honor you there. Thank you. Thank you for that. Anything else?
Well, I'm really big on inflammation right now as a process, so I've developed an herbal formula that just works brilliantly well at reducing inflammation. So it's a herbal pill that you take, and instead of taking NSAIDs and ibuprofen that can eat up your stomach and destroy your digestive tract. These pills are actually quite effective at mediating and reducing inflammation, and the pills are actually good for you and don't harm you unless you're allergic to something. And then also we have a pain reduction cream, and then you put that topically on your skin, and it reduces inflammation within seconds, which is a wonderful product. So today, coming to the office, I had a 20-pound pack on, and I was walking to work, and I rubbed this cream on my old knee, and when I got here, I wasn't in pain, which was really nice. So that's a good example. So it doesn't fix why the inflammation's there, but it reduces the inflammation. It'll give you relief. There's lots of reasons for having inflammation in excess. If somebody wants to contact us in some fashion, we can send them free samples.
Oh, that's very generous of you. And just while we're there, tell us how can people contact you or get in touch with you?
MosherHealth.com, and our phone number is 858-679-2995. So there's the website, and the email address is mohc@cox.net.
Okay, terrific. Well, it's always a joy to talk to you. I've got to get in there and get some of those magic inflammation pills of yours. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you'd like to add?
No, I think I've filled up my brain here, so I'm probably done.
Well, I doubt that, but I'm very grateful to have you, and thank you for joining me today.
This was great. It was fun, and I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
My pleasure. You've been listening to the Life Purpose Advisor podcast. We hope you enjoyed what you heard today. If you'd like more information, you can visit us at lifepurposeadvisor.com. We appreciate your feedback and would love to hear from you about who else you'd like to hear on the Life Purpose Advisor podcast. And we'll see you next time.